Imagine a chilly December night in 1773. The air is thick with anticipation. A group of colonists disguised as Native Americans board ships docked in Boston Harbor. They are about to make history. With a resounding splash, chests of tea plummet into the water. This act of defiance, the Boston Tea Party, would forever alter the course of American history. The Boston Tea Party was not just about tea, it was a boiling point. Colonists were fed up with British rule. They sought freedom from what they saw as oppressive taxes and unjust laws. The events of that night would resonate for generations to come. This is the story of their fight and how it still speaks to us today. To understand the Boston Tea Party, we must first understand the simmering resentment that fueled it. The colonists, though loyal British subjects, found themselves increasingly at odds with the Crown. The crux of the issue? Taxation without representation. The British government, burdened by debt from the French and Indian War, looked to its American colonies for revenue. They imposed a series of taxes, the Stamp Act, the Townshend Acts, and others. These acts levied taxes on everyday items, from paper to tea. Colonists argued they had no say in these taxes, as they had no elected representatives in the British Parliament. The cry of "no taxation without representation" echoed throughout the colonies. It wasn't just about the money, it was about principle. The colonists, accustomed to a degree of self-governance, saw these taxes as an infringement on their rights. They believed they were being treated as a source of revenue rather than equal members of the British Empire. Tensions between colonists and British authorities continued to escalate. In 1770, a fateful encounter in Boston would further inflame the situation. This event, etched in history as the Boston Massacre, became a rallying cry for colonial resistance. On March 5th, a group of colonists gathered near a British sentry post. They taunted the soldiers, throwing snowballs and insults. The situation spiraled out of control. British soldiers, feeling threatened, fired into the crowd, killing 5 colonists. The Boston Massacre, though a chaotic and tragic event, was seized upon by colonial propagandists. They used it to paint a picture of British brutality and tyranny. The image of innocent colonists gunned down by British soldiers fueled outrage and solidified anti-British sentiment. The colonies were on a collision course with revolution. In 1773, the British Parliament passed the Tea Act. This act, seemingly innocuous, would prove to be the final straw for many colonists. It gave the British East India Company a monopoly on tea sales in the colonies. While the Tea Act actually lowered the price of tea, it was seen by colonists as a calculated maneuver. They believed it was a ploy to get them to accept the principle of taxation without representation. By buying the cheaper tea, they would be implicitly acknowledging Parliament's right to tax them. The colonists viewed the Tea Act as a direct attack on their liberties. It wasn't just about the tea, it was about control. The British government was trying to assert its dominance, and the colonists were determined to resist. Section 5. The Sons of Liberty, brewing a revolution. As resentment against British policies grew, so too did organized resistance. Secret societies like the Sons of Liberty emerged throughout the colonies. These groups, committed to defending colonial rights, played a key role in fomenting rebellion. The Sons of Liberty, led by figures like Samuel Adams, were masters of propaganda and mobilization. They organized boycotts of British goods, disseminated revolutionary pamphlets, and held public meetings to rally support. They used public demonstrations, often theatrical and symbolic, to stir up public sentiment and challenge British authority. The Sons of Liberty were instrumental in transforming discontent into active resistance. They provided a voice to the voiceless, a platform for the grievances of ordinary colonists. Their actions helped create the conditions for the Boston Tea Party and set the stage for the American Revolution. Section 6. A Night of Defiance. The Boston Tea Party unfolds. The arrival of British ships carrying tea to Boston Harbor in late 1773 presented a pivotal moment. The Sons of Liberty, along with other patriots, were determined to take a stand. They would not allow the tea to be unloaded, for to do so would be to concede to British authority. On the night of December 16th, a group of colonists disguised as Mohawk Indians boarded the ships. They stealthily and systematically dumped 342 chests of tea into the harbor. The act was swift, decisive, and carried out with an air of defiance. The Boston Tea Party was not a riot. It was a calculated act of political theatre. It was a message to the British Crown. The colonists would not be bullied or taxed without their consent. They were willing to fight for their freedom. Section 7. The Empire Strikes Back, Aftermath and Escalation. The British government, outraged by the Boston Tea Party, responded with force. They enacted a series of punitive measures known as the Coercive Acts, designed to punish Massachusetts and quell colonial dissent. The port of Boston was closed, town meetings were restricted, and British troops were quartered in colonial homes. The Coercive Acts, far from subduing the colonists, had the opposite effect. They galvanized colonial opposition and strengthened the resolve for independence. The other colonies rallied in support of Massachusetts, sending aid and condemning British actions. In response to the Coercive Acts, colonial leaders from 12 of the 13 colonies convened the First Continental Congress in 1774. This meeting marked a turning point. The colonies, once divided, were now united in their opposition to British rule. The seeds of revolution had been sown. Section 8. Echoes of the past, modern parallels, and the question of tyranny. The Boston Tea Party, though a distant echo in the annals of history, still resonates today. It stands as a powerful symbol of resistance against tyranny. But what does tyranny look like in the modern world? We have plenty of examples of tyranny happening every day. Government overreach, a corrupt federal government that taxes every aspect of our lives, infringement on our fundamental rights of free speech, religion, and the right to keep and bear arms. They see parallels between the colonists' fight against unjust taxation and modern struggles against a tyrannical government completely out of touch with American citizens. Others draw connections between the colonists' use of boycotts and protests and modern movements that utilize similar tactics. From civil rights marches to online activism, citizens continue to find ways to make their voices heard and challenge the status quo. Section 9. The Unfinished Revolution, Our Boston Tea Party Moment. The legacy of the Boston Tea Party is a reminder that the fight for liberty and justice is ongoing. It compels us to ask ourselves, what are the injustices of our time? What are the issues that we feel passionately about? Is it a tax system that does more harm than good? Is it a federal government so worried about retaining power they have imported millions of illegals to vote against citizens? Is it vaccine or mask mandates? Is it the regular infringements of free speech silencing voices of dissent? Is it the repeated attempts to jail and assassinate their political rivals and their supporters? What do you think will be our generation's Boston Tea Party? What will be our Boston Massacre? Has it already happened and we didn't know because the mainstream media didn't report it? The fight for freedom is an unfinished revolution. It is up to each generation to take up the mantle, to channel the spirit of the revolution, and to continue the struggle for a more perfect union. The question is not whether we will have our revolutionary moment, but what form it will take and when it will arrive.